Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, by Matson. Chapter 4, The Rings of Blood and Marble, the outermost ring of Atlantis. Ring 10, the militarized domain of King Titanor, swallowed Leon and his 4 companions like a devouring beast of marble, gold, and unrelenting violence. Towering concentric walls rose on every side, their polished stone surfaces veined with pulsing crystal lattices that hummed with gigamancy. The very ground beneath their feet shifted subtly, as though the island itself breathed with stolen gravity, pulling at boots and bones in nauseating waves. The air hung heavy, saturated with the mingled odors of roasted ox flesh from street vendors, spilled fermented wine, the metallic tang of fresh blood soaking into arena sand, and the cloying sweetness of Pharmacia incense drifting from shadowed temples where priests offered up the innocent to feed the powers of the kings. Thousands upon thousands thronged the broad avenues carved between the massive ring walls. Warriors from every bloodline across the known world jostled shoulder to shoulder. Lean Pharmacia scholars from distant eastern valleys clutching satchels of shimmering vials, barrel-chested altering brutes whose bodies already sprouted extra-armored limbs or scales, wild-eyed Mancy users whose skin bore the visible rot of their chosen element, charred flesh for pyromancers, petrified patches for geomancers, toxic rashes for aquamancers. Merchants hawked enchanted weapons, elixirs promising temporary invulnerability, and crude amulets bearing the sigils of minor watchers. Painted priestesses in translucent silks led chains of trembling sacrificial victims, young men and women marked for the altars, toward towering temples whose spires pierced the sky like accusatory fingers. Spectators already drunk on anticipation roared in clusters, placing bets on which teams would survive the coming brackets. Leon kept his hood drawn low over his storm-gray eyes, the simple olive branch clay, token pressed warm and reassuring against his chest beneath his tunic. His forearms burned beneath the coarse wool sleeves. The glowing scars from Kion's first full invocation had spread noticeably during the voyage, faint luminous tributaries now reaching toward his elbows. The hidden dimensions of Atlantis pressed against him like a living thing, amplifying the Watcher's presence. "Behold your inheritance, little pup," Kion's voice rumbled through the blood covenant, laced with predatory amusement and insatiable hunger. 10 rings of unimaginable wealth and power. Marble avenues paved with the crushed bones of the weak. Arenas where men become gods for a day. Why content yourself with obedience to a silent creator when you could claim a throne and rewrite the very code of creation? Leon clenched his jaw until his teeth ached and forced his gaze forward. The remnant elder's words echoed in his mind. True dominion belongs only to those who walk humbly with God. He touched the token through his tunic and whispered a silent prayer as they pressed deeper into the island. Stelios walked at his right shoulder like a living fortress, his massive bronze-banded club slung across his back. The ritual scars across his barrel chest glowed with faint inner light, and his movements carried a new, ponderous weight, bones growing denser and heavier with every passing day of altering use. Lysandros stayed close on the left, pale and scholarly, clutching his satchel of glass vials and dried herbs as though it were a shield against the fracturing of his own mind. His sharp eyes darted at every shadow, chasing phantoms born of Pharmacia residue. Piran strode a few paces ahead, wild red hair whipping like living flame, sparks dancing involuntarily at his fingertips to the mingled delight and terror of the crowd. The burn scars on his forearms and neck had darkened further, black char creeping like ink beneath the skin. Boreas brought up the rear, tall and wiry, a constant protective swirl of cool wind encircling the group. Yet every few steps a dry, painful cough rattled from his chest, leaving faint metallic traces on his lips, the price of aromancy slowly poisoning his own breath. They were assigned quarters in a sprawling bloodline barracks complex near the boundary wall between Ring 10 and Ring 9. The chamber was modest by the opulent standards of Atlantis. 5 simple pallets on the stone floor, a central brazier fed by biomancy, so it never required fuel or tending. Narrow windows overlooking training yards where lesser warriors already bled and screamed in preparation. The air inside reeked of old sweat, dried blood, and the faint herbal bitterness of previous occupants' Pharmacia experiments. As night fell across the rings, the team gathered around the brazier. Its unnatural flames danced with hues of sapphire and blood red, casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach toward them with hungry, watcher-like fingers. Lysandros unrolled a crude map of Ring 7 across the floor, acquired from a shady Pharmacia vendor in exchange for 3 vials of his strongest calming draft. 8 teams of 5, the scholar said quietly, voice edged with the cynicism that deepened daily. 40 fighters total in our bracket. Elimination matches until only a handful of survivors remain to challenge King Gorgathon. The giant mixes aromancy and geomancy, sandstorms that flay flesh, localized earthquakes that swallow men whole, and then the final twist the remnant elder warned us of. He trailed off, eyes distant as a phantom memory flickered across his face. Stelios's massive fist tightened around the haft of his club until the wood groaned. If more than one of us still stands after the king falls, the lords will force us to fight one another. There can be only one ruler per ring. His voice was gruff but steady, the loyalty of an older brother shining through the growing heaviness of his bones. We fight as one until the Creator decides otherwise. Piron laughed, but the sound held a reckless, strained edge. New char had crept higher up his neck since their arrival. Let them try to make me kill my brothers. I'll burn the entire arena to glass first and roast Gorgathon myself. The crowds will cheer louder for my fire than for any Nephilim brute. Boreas coughed once, dry and toxic, then spoke in his calm, calculating tone. Ring 7 is infamous for brutal, altering warriors, men and women who have fully surrendered to the hunger of the Order of Guff. Extra limbs, living armor, monstrous strength. We must strike with precision and coordination, no wasted invocations. Leon stared into the brazier, the reflection of his glowing scars dancing in his eyes. The divine vision from that night in Calliste replayed behind them. The island convulsing, massive waves swallowing the 10 rings of gold and blasphemy. Poseidon's defiant roar cut short by crushing depths. We are not here merely for thrones or glory, he reminded them, voice low yet carrying the growing weight of conviction. The Creator himself commanded me to enter these tournaments, claim a place among the 10 kings, and ultimately cast this entire city of false gods into the sea. Every victory, every survivor, brings us closer to that judgment. But we walk a narrow path. The gifts tempt us at every step toward the very monstrosity we are sent to end. To demonstrate, he invoked Kion with careful restraint. Bright blue flames erupted along his forearms, not consuming but empowering, muscles swelling with godlike strength, searing heat radiating outward. For a heartbeat, the massive wings of living flame threatened to unfurl from his shoulders, illuminating the chamber like daylight. The power felt intoxicating, like the promise of divinity itself. Then Leon forced the flames down. The spiritual ache struck immediately, a deep bruise upon his soul, and new faint luminous lines traced themselves further up his arms toward the biceps. Whispers slithered through his thoughts like smoke. Stronger, faster, worthy of altars and sacrifices, Why serve when you can rule? He extinguished the fire with visible effort and gripped the olive branch token until his knuckles whitened. A gentle, pure warmth, not from Kion, spread from the clay, easing the hollow ache. The others watched in heavy silence, their own corruptions plain on their bodies and faces. Stelios's ponderous movements, Lysandros's momentary confusion as phantoms danced at the edge of his vision, Pyrrhon's constant internal heat shimmering the air, Boreas's labored breathing. That night's sleep came fitfully for all of them. Leon rose before dawn, slipping out into the training yards alone, while the others still tossed on their pallets. The yards were already alive with brutal activity under flickering torchlight. A Pharmacia practitioner thickened the air around his sparring partner until the man collapsed, gasping and clawing at his throat. An altering brute grew 2 extra armored limbs and smashed a reinforced practice dummy into splinters with raw, monstrous strength. A pyromancer whose skin was already blackened at the edges hurled walls of flame that left the sand vitrified and smoking. The horror of it pressed upon Leon like a physical weight. This was the world the 3 orders had promised humanity. Minds fracturing into paranoia, bodies twisting into grotesque parodies of angelic power, spirits devoured by Rav's endless hunger. Violence filled the earth exactly as the cries of the innocent rose like smoke to the heavens. A small movement in the shadows caught his eye. A child, no older than 8, bearing the quiet, unmarred features of the line of Seth, watched him from behind a cracked pillar. Their eyes met across the torch-lit yard. The child pressed a finger to their lips in warning, then darted forward and slipped a tiny folded parchment into Leon's hand before vanishing like a ghost into the pre-dawn gloom. Leon unfolded the note by the faint blue glow of his scars. The script was simple, written in a careful hand. The faithful remnant sees you, winged one of Tanaju. Enoch walked with God and was taken. Walk likewise in obedience. We pray in the hidden places. The flood draws near, but mercy remains for those who reject the covenants. Hold fast, judgment comes. A friend among the outer rings. Leon folded the parchment carefully and tucked it beside the olive branch token. A small but defiant spark of hope kindled in his chest amid the suffocating darkness of Atlantis. Not all light had been extinguished. The next 2 days blurred into a relentless rhythm of preparation, immersion in the island's depravity, and quiet moments of prayer. The team trained together in the barracks yard from dawn until the sun bled crimson into the western sea. They perfected coordinated combinations. Leon's blue flame leaps and projectiles covering Stelios's brute frontal assaults. Lysandros's contact poisons and air-thickening powders, creating openings. Pyrrhon's area-clearing fire-clearing groups. Boreas's winds providing mobility, shields, and suffocating vacuums. Each session exacted its visible toll. Stelios's bones creaked audibly with every heavy step. Lysandros began muttering responses to voices only he could hear. Pyrrhon's skin blackened further at the edges, the constant internal heat making sweat sizzle on contact. Boreas's cough worsened, leaving faint traces of something dark and metallic on his lips when he thought no one watched. On the evening before the brackets officially opened, the 5 companions ventured deeper into the rings to scout the arena of Ring 7 itself. Traveling inward through the concentric circles was a descent into ever greater opulence and moral horror. Ring 9's vast Pharmacia academies reeked of mind-altering vapors. Scholars with sunken eyes and twitching hands brewed elixirs that could rot flesh from within or induce waking nightmares indistinguishable from reality. Ring 8's dragon-blooded warlords hoarded mountains of gold, daughters offered in fresh covenants, and plundered artifacts in cavernous halls, their bodies slowly transforming, scales spreading, tails lashing, voices turning to guttural growls as human speech failed them. Everywhere the cries of the innocent pierced the air, chained victims dragged screaming to altars where their blood fed biomancy and necromancy rituals. Children born of forced unions with Nephilim enforcers, already showing signs of monstrous inheritance. Small clusters of the faithful remnant dragged from hiding places for public sport, their simple white robes torn as crowds jeered. The arena of Ring 7 was a colossal bowl carved from living stone and reinforced with geomancy, capable of holding 30,000 frenzied spectators. The fighting floor was vast, covered in sand the color of dried blood. Massive pillars ringed the edges, carved with grotesque bas-reliefs depicting Nephilim triumphs over the weak. At the far end rose King Gorgathon's throne, a monstrous seat of fused earth and wind-sculpted marble from which the giant could summon localized earthquakes or devastating sandstorms with a gesture. As Leon and his team observed from the upper tiers, a preliminary exhibition match was underway below. Two teams of lesser bloodline fighters tore into one another with savage abandon. Pharmacia powders thickened an opponent's blood until veins burst. Aeromancy gusts hurled warriors skyward only to slam them back into the sand. Altering brutes grew extra limbs and crushed skulls with wet, sickening cracks. The crowd roared with religious ecstasy, chanting the names of favored champions and the three orders alike. One young altering warrior, not unlike Leon, manifested temporary wings of living stone and took to the air in a desperate bid for advantage. King Gorgathon rose from his throne, his body already heavily petrified, bones creaking like shifting rock. The giant slammed a massive fist into the arena floor. A localized earthquake split the sand asunder, while a cutting sandstorm whipped up around the flyer. Flesh was flayed from bone in seconds. The crowd exploded in bloodthirsty approval. Gorgathon's laughter boomed across the arena on unnatural winds. "Witness the price of weakness," the Nephilim king roared, voice amplified by aeromancy. "The body fails exactly as the order of Guff foretold. The spirit hungers as Ra'av promised. Only the strong and the obedient to the Watchers will rule these rings." Leon's fists clenched until the glowing scars on his arms flared bright blue. Kion surged forward eagerly within the hidden dimensions. "Take him now, pup. End the giant in front of 30,000 witnesses. Claim Ring 7 in a single glorious moment and let them worship you as the new king." The temptation crashed over him like a tidal wave. Power waited, blue flames hot enough to melt stone, wings to dominate the sky, strength to challenge even a Nephilim. But the remnant note and the olive branch token burned in his mind. The Creator's vision of the island sinking. Obedience, not spectacle or pride. He turned away from the railing. "Tomorrow," he told his team quietly, as they made their way back through the torchlit avenues, "we enter the bracket. We fight with discipline and unity. We survive together as long as the Creator permits. And we never forget the true purpose that brought us here." That night, as the team tried to rest in their barracks chamber, a commotion erupted outside. Delegations from the Egyptian Black Fleet had taken up positions in Ring 7's luxury boxes high above the arena. Their colossal forms were unmistakable even at distance. Amun-Ra's crystal growths sparking with stolen lightning, Horus's multifaceted eyes scanning the crowds like a living lens, Sobek's crocodile jaws clacking in anticipation. Their booming, mocking laughter rolled down across the rings like profane thunder, a reminder that the false gods of the Black Land had come to witness, and perhaps profit from, the cull. Leon stood at the narrow window long after his companions had fallen into uneasy sleep, watching the distant lights of the central palace where Poseidon and Thalorion waited. The weight of destiny pressed upon him. The blue flames beneath his skin flared once in response to the island's pervasive power, then subsided at his silent command. "Not my will," he prayed, fingers tight around the olive branch token, "but yours, creator of all, even if this body fails as the Watchers predicted. Even if the hunger grows loud, let obedience prevail where power destroys." Dawn broke blood-red over the 10 rings of Atlantis, as though the sky itself bled in anticipation. Deep, mournful blasts from conch shells the size of grown men echoed across the island. The Battle of the Rings had officially begun. The team of 5 from Tanaju marched into the colossal arena of Ring 7 amid a storm of roaring crowds, thrown flower petals, copper coins, and frenzied chants. 8 teams total, 40 hardened fighters, stood upon the blood-stained sand, sizing one another up with predatory hunger. King Gorgathon loomed upon his throne of fused earth and wind, his petrifying body creaking as he grinned down at the fresh meat delivered for his amusement. Leon rolled his shoulders, feeling Kion stir eagerly in the hidden dimensions of his blood. The blue flames waited just beneath his skin, ready. His teammates formed up beside him. Stelios, the unbreakable shield, Lysandros, the subtle poisoner and strategist, Pyrrhon, the living wildfire, Boreas, the master of winds and air. The head priest in blood-red robes raised his arms high, voice amplified across the arena by hidden Mancy. "Let the culling begin, for the glory of the Watchers, for the rings of Atlantis. Let flesh prove once more that it fails." The great horn blew a second time. Chaos erupted across the sand. Leon exploded forward with his team in perfect formation, invoking Kion with measured restraint. Bright blue flames roared along his forearms as he charged. The first wave of opponents, a squad of brutish, altering warriors, heavy on raw muscle and extra limbs, met them head-on. Stelios became a living battering ram, his massive shield and club absorbing thunderous blows, while his hardening bronze skin shrugged off strikes that would fell lesser men. Lysandros moved like a ghost, flinging precise pinches of powder that thickened the air around enemy legs into sluggish molasses, turning charges into stumbling lurches. Pyrrhon unleashed a roaring fireball that engulfed 2 attackers in screaming flame, the heat so intense it vitrified patches of sand. Boreas whipped up cutting gusts that opened arteries and knocked warriors off balance, creating openings for the others. Leon leapt high, wings of blue fire unfurling for a single powerful glide. He descended like divine judgment, flaming fists driving through bronze armor and into flesh with searing heat. A superheated projectile of condensed flame exploded against another fighter's shield, melting it into slag and sending the man reeling. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch. "The winged dog of Tanaju," they chanted. "Kion's champion, the blue flame rises." But even in the first taste of victory, Leon felt the deepening cost. The scars spread further up his arms. The whispers of pride and godhood grew louder in his mind. Across the arena, King Gorgathon watched with calculating, petrifying eyes, already preparing his brutal response for when the survivors of this brutal bracket finally earned the right to challenge his throne. The Battle of the Rings had truly begun in Ring 7. And high above, in the luxury boxes, the Egyptian Nephilim giants laughed with cruel delight, their mocking voices carrying on the wind, unaware that the chosen instrument of the Creator's judgment now burned bright amid their spectacle of corruption and blood. All flesh is grass, the grass withers, but the word of the Creator endures forever. This has been an unabridged audio production of Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, Chapter 4, The Rings of Blood and Marble, by Matson. All rights reserved by Matson, LLC. Copyright Matson, LLC 2026. If you enjoyed this production, please like, share, and subscribe. Available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow the author at Matson for updates. Links in the description.